Hi again, I'm John Nielsen with Wing Chun Hall, here to discuss Wing Chun, your best self-defense option. And today we're continuing with the history series. In Wing Chun Origins Part 2, I introduced the Southern hypothesis, namely that Wing Chun was incubated mainly in the Pearl River Delta and was also influenced by global factors. This video explores the evidence for the Southern hypothesis. Wing Chun is arguably the most well-known self-defense system from southern China. People often associate Wing Chun with certain features like sticking hands exercises, wooden dummies and training apparatus, an emphasis on the inclined upright stance, the dragon pole, and the dual sabers. However, these features are not unique to Wing Chun. Several Pearl River martial systems, including Hung Gar, Chole Foot, Southern Dragon, and Southern Praying Mantis, share these characteristics. These similarities can only be attributed to a shared, long-term martial culture. Before there were planes, trains, and automobiles, there were watercraft on waterways. Rivers were the main source of travel and trade. The Pearl River traces from the South China Sea north almost as far as the Yangtze River. One could travel to almost any point in China from the Pearl River Delta. Because of this, in the mid-19th century, Foshan was among the top 3 centers of commerce in the country. At that time, the shipbuilders for the seagoing vessels developed the technology to fashion square holes in large logs to use these for masts and other maritime features. Clearly, this technology, along with the abundant regional forests, allowed the southern martial artists to design various wooden training devices, including the wooden dummy. Despite Jackie Chan's movie, there is no actual evidence that wooden dummies came from Shaolin, and the only evidence suggesting they came from the opera is a modern replica in a museum dedicated to the perpetuation of the opera myth. Instead, it is clear that the wooden dummies were a product of the forests and harbors of the Pearl River Delta. In addition to sharing apparatus technology, these Pearl River Delta systems share several hand combat characteristics. Meir Shahar reports that a new style of boxing, known as short boxing, was introduced to Shaolin in the 18th century, though it appears to have entered China before that. There is no account of its Chinese origins or migration, but hand combat manuals from the period show that by the mid-18th century, short boxing, with its upright stances and emphasis on infighting, had permeated the whole country. Through time, short boxing became known as plum blossom boxing. Virtually all Pearl River Delta systems retain some vestige of plum blossom boxing in the names of their techniques, forms, and training apparatus. Coincidentally, short boxing entered China at about the same time James Figg, the father of modern boxing, was asking the same questions and coming up with the same conclusions in England. This is not an isolated phenomenon. Throughout history, 2 groups of people at the same time facing the same problems in separate regions have come up with the same solution. However, healthy Sino-European trade pervaded most of the 18th century, and martial methodology could easily have been shared. All institutions are subject to market forces, and combat systems are not exempt. One important challenge is to balance the tensions between keeping it real and keeping it safe. Between the 18th and 20th centuries, these tensions resulted in many changes to hand combat systems all across the globe, but the pugilist systems of the Pearl River Delta still bear a marked resemblance to that of James Figg, even today. This conservative approach to pugilism is at least partially attributable to the ever-present violent conflicts between the Hakka and Punti clans. Of the 2 social groups, the Hakka are the much more unique. While Punti just means native, Hakka means guest family, and no one is entirely certain of their origin. Though DNA studies indicate Northern Han ancestry, certain anthropologists observe that centuries of intermarrying are bound to produce common bloodlines. Consequently, Hakka origins remain a mystery. Even after generations of living in the same location, the Hakka are still referred to as guests because they refuse to integrate or adopt a regional identity. Instead, they identify with their own cultural group, share a cultural dialect, and will recognize and welcome a fellow Hakka whenever they meet in any corner of the globe, a cultural trait they share with Gypsies and Jews. Other cultural markers are an overrepresentation in legal, financial, and unelected government positions, and an overrepresentation in secret societies and revolutionary activity. For instance, Hong Xichuan, the founder of the Heavenly Kingdom and leader of the Taiping Rebellion, along with most of the movement's leaders, was Hakka. Another peculiar Hakka characteristic is their tendency to remain loyal to a culturally harmful political ideology. For instance, though Mao was not Hakka, most of his generals and other officials, including the rank-and-file communists, were overwhelmingly Hakka. When the nationalists turned against the communists in the 1930s, the Communist Party was forced into the Hakka Hills. While there, the communists killed 700,000 Hakkas. But curiously, the Hakka people as a whole remained faithful communists. The tension between the Hakka and the Punti along the Pearl River Delta began when the Qing drove the surviving Ming loyalists to the island of Taiwan around 1661. To weaken the Loyalists' position, the Qing enacted a 10-year scorched earth policy, burning the coastline for miles in the vicinity of Taiwan. When the last Ming Loyalist was subdued, the Qing reopened the area, but few Punti returned. Seeing the opportunity, the Hakka moved into the most fertile areas. This inequity fueled tension, which would frequently rise to violence. The culmination of this violence occurred in the aftermath of the Opera Rebellion. As the Qing sought those complicit in the rebellion, the Hakka were quick to accuse their Punti neighbors, which caused even more tension and, from 1855 to 1867, an open clan war, resulting in over 1 million deaths. These multi-decade clan conflicts took place mostly in Meizhou, Guangdong, another branch of the Pearl River Delta and not far from Foshan. Many Southern military instructors would have gained knowledge and experience in these conflicts, which would explain several similarities of the combat systems that developed in the region. In summary, short boxing, sticking hands training, and wooden man training apparatus are not unique to Wing Chun, but are features common to the combat systems of the Pearl River Delta and undoubtedly influenced Leung Jan as he assembled the system we call Wing Chun. Thanks for watching. I'm John Nielsen with Wing Chun Hall. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and support me on Patreon.